Hi, welcome to the daily drawing. Today we're going to be drawing a penguin. I'm going to go a little bit faster today just to see if that's something that you guys are more interested in. All right, so to start with, we're going to do the body. The body is basically just an ovally shape. It helps if you do a really long parenthesis first with a short smile at the bottom. And because this penguin's walking to the side, we're going to make that smile curve up a little bit sharper, and that's going to go all the way up until we get to the shoulder on the other side of the body. So it essentially looks like a really stretched out egg or an ovally shape. All right, after we do that, then we're going to do the head. Above the body, we have a round circle-y shape that goes above kind of the corner-ish of this oval, right about here. Now, whenever you draw that, really pay attention to the size of the penguin's head. If I measure it, I should be able to fit about 2.5 to 3 heads. So I want to make sure that my head's not too small, but it's also not too big. So kind of tweak the size of the head until you're satisfied with the look of the shape of the head that you have. If you draw the head a little bit bigger, it's going to make it look a little younger. If you draw it a little bit smaller, it'll look like a slightly older penguin. So depending on what you're going for, you might want to change that up a bit. All right, now that I have the head in the body, I'm going to go ahead and connect it to the like the body with the neck. So I'm just going to do a parenthesis on this side, starting kind of on the bottom half of the head, and then doing that kind of parenthesis shape. And then I'm going to do something similar to this one. I'm going to start with a parenthesis facing this way. And then once I get about a little less than halfway, I'm actually going to curve it and have a bump. You can see that there's a bump on the back of their neck here. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a slight parenthesis here until it gets close to touching the outside of the body. I want to leave a little bit of the shoulder right here, so I don't want to meet that up with the perfect edge right here. If you did and meet it up, feel free to just add a bump for the shoulder like this if you need to. But make sure it doesn't look too lumpy, because you don't want it to look, you want to avoid going like this. That would look kind of awkward. So try to keep it natural feeling to where it looks as though if you pet it, it would feel kind of smooth. All right, now that I have that, I can go ahead and erase the top lump that makes it the body. Keep this line though, because we need that for the jaw. All right, now we're going to focus on just the head for now. We'll come back to the flippers and all that stuff later. So for the head, we can see that we have the beak right here, and then we have the top part and the lower part, and we have the eye. We don't visibly see the ears because they're hidden somewhere behind the feathers. So the easiest way that I think to do this beak would be to start with drawing the center line. So to do that, we're going to find about the center of the head. So I'm just going to very lightly draw like little crosshairs here. So this is about the center of the head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a little bit further in front like this. And I'm going to draw just a simple line kind of coming out at whatever angle you want the beak. So if you want the penguin looking up, feel free to draw the beak looking up instead if you want. So you can change that angle if you want to. All right, so once I have that angle, you can kind of do the expression. So I'm going to make mine smiling just slightly. So I'm going to add a little bit of a wonk to the tip of the beak here. All right, make sure that you're not making it too long. If you look at the beak and kind of go down, it shouldn't be any longer than your body. So if your beak's coming like all the way out here, you might have gone too far. Just push it back in. All right, for the top of the beak, all we're going to do is we're going to start with a slight frown. And then before we get close to the head, we're going to do another frown to add a wonk to it. So I'm going to start with a backwards facing frown like this. So it's kind of almost a parenthesis that you're curving inwards. You want to make sure that that looks somewhat sharp, but you do still want it to be a little bit rounded. So I'm going to start with kind of a curved parenthesis, but angling backwards. Go ahead and continue that until you get close to the inside of the head right here. And then you're just going to add a bump like this. That way it's not a perfectly smooth beak, and it gives a little bit more character to the penguin as you are drawing it. All right, now that should naturally flow into the curve of the head like this, so that we have a slightly wonky beak on the top. Now the lower beak is a little bit smoother. Notice that the tip of the beak is a little bit smaller right here, and then it slowly meshes down into the actual head itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a very small smile like this. And then once I get about to the same part where we have opposite of the nose bump, then I'm going to change that to start curving down. And I want that to kind of line up with the inside of the head right here. So I want that to kind of flow nicely all together so that it doesn't look too off-putting. And I want to look as though it like naturally flows with the rest of the head. All right, afterwards you can erase the inside of the head right here so that you're left with just the kind of beak shape. Now we're not quite done with the beak yet. If we look at it, we can see that there is these kind of where the orange lines are going is where the actual beak itself is. So I'm just going to draw kind of a parallel line to start with. That's going to slowly start getting a little bigger. Your goal is to kind of aim it towards that bump that we drew originally. And they have like a little black spot on the tip of their beak. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a slight wonk here. I'm going to shade in the tip of their beak. If you choose to color it, you don't have to shade it in at this part. This is just going to help me remember that this part is black and I don't forget that later. I'm going to do the same thing here. This is going to follow very close to it and then slowly get a little bit wider like this. So that's going to be my penguin's beak, so that it's not too big, not too small. Now, if you've drawn it and you feel like it's the wrong shape or size, feel free to kind of like downsize it or upgrade it, depending on how big or how small that you want to go. And all you have to do for that is you just have to draw a parallel line and then erase the line that's on top or the line that's on the bottom. So feel free to tweak it if you don't like it. All right, now that we have the beak, we're going to move on to the eye. If I go across from the indentation where the beak meets the head, that's where the top of the eye is going to line up with. And then this is going to line up close to where the top line of that beak is. So across from here and across from this area right here. So somewhere in this area behind the beak is going to be where I put my eye. Now you can draw it as just a simple circle if you're going for more of a cartoony style. This particular penguin has a slight frown on the top with a smile on the bottom. So I'm going to start with a slight frown. But then I'm going to do a more exaggerated smile than what the top part is. So it's not a perfect circle. It's a little bit more of a shape to it. And then, of course, I'm going to add a highlight on the inside. Now, in the picture, there is no highlight, but I like the look of highlights. I think they look cool. So I'm going to add a highlight and then fill in the rest. So I have a simple eye. And then, of course, you can erase the rest of the stuff on the inside of the head. I would suggest keep part of the jawline, though, so that you don't lose that look of the head separated from the neck. He almost looks kind of like a seagull at this point. That's cool. All right, I'm going to go ahead and draw the parenthesis that goes around the eye and stuff. And then it goes back like this, just so that I don't forget to do those markings later. All right, now that I have the head done, I can go ahead and move on to the rest of the body. It's pretty simple. I'm going to start with this arm right here. We can see that for this flipper, the measurement for the flipper is lining up to be more than half of the body. So I'm going to go about right here to where it's like 2/3 of the body. That's how long my flipper needs to go out. So I'm going to put a little marker dot here to tell me that that's how far my flipper needs to go. Now the shape of the flipper is pretty simple. I don't want to start on the neck. I want to start right after the shoulder. So here we have a neck, or this is the back of the head, this is the neck, this is the shoulder. So start slightly below the shoulder. And then all you're going to do is you're just going to do an exaggerated frown like this, going out to your marker dot. It doesn't have to be perfect, just get it close. And then you're just going to cap it off with a smile like this. And then you're just going to follow that back into the body. Make sure it's not too thin, but you don't want it super thick. And if you want to go for a little bit more realism, there is a slight kind of like smile right here that gets a little bit more exaggerated. So I'm going to frown this up until it gets close to the body, and then I'm going to add a little bit of a smile for the armpit area. And then, of course, you can tweak it from there if you want to, but I think this looks close enough. And then from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw some of those markings. So for the black part, I'm just going to start on the bottom of the flipper right here. I'm just going to slowly turn that into where I'm doing a parallel line for the inside of the flipper like this. And then if you want to have that separation of the white with the colored part, it's just a wiggly line. Kind of like you're doing like one of those M birds sideways, or like a weird like letter E, but without drawing the full thing. Or, oh, it's like a heart shape too. That's cute. All right. Now I also see that the neck part curving down like this goes down into the body. So I'm going to start right here where the bottom of the neck would be. I'm going to add a slight parenthesis first, kind of like it has a t-shirt on. And then once I get close to the neck, I'm going to switch it into a frown and go all the way down below the armpit and then stop. That's where I'm going to have the black markings marked out. All right, now that we have this fin done, I'm going to jump across to the other one. So if I go across from this fin like this, that should line up to it. So I'm just going to go across. That's where I'm going to start my fin. Now on this one, I don't have the armpit and shoulder. I just have kind of like the fin coming out. Very important, don't let this fin be longer than this one. This one should be the bigger fin because it's closer to us, and this fin's being overlapped by the body. So you're just going to start off with drawing a slightly flat line that you're then going to add a parenthesis to. After you draw that parenthesis, before you finish the rest of the fin, measure it. Make sure that it's not longer than your previous fin. If you're satisfied with the length, then all you're going to do is you're just going to cap it off with a slight smile at the tip. And then you're just going to do a frown and connect it back to the body. Now, if you want to go ahead and do the markings and stuff, we can do them the same way we did before. Start a little bit lower on the tip of the fin. Then we're going to slowly bring it back up into the inside of the body. And we can see a part of the heart shape for the armpit white part. All right, all we have left to do is the feet. So if I go down here, I can see that the feet are going to be connected to the thigh. So here's the thigh here and here, and then we have the feet coming out. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to draw a parenthesis on the inside of the body right here to kind of help us out with where the thigh is going to go. And then I want there to be a bump out on the other side. So if I go across from this parenthesis, I'm going to add another parenthesis. This is going to indicate my thigh area. So this is going to be the outer part of the thigh, and my foot's going to come out right here. Now, I want to go ahead and do this other thigh before I draw the feet, though. Here we can see this thigh goes a little bit lower than the body, and then it curves up. So I'm going to start on the outside of the body here. I'm going to allow it to go a little bit lower, like this, and then I'm just going to curve it back up to the inside of the body. I don't want to make it too big because their thighs are actually pretty small. They don't have very thick thighs. And then once I'm satisfied with the look of the thighs, then I can move on to the feet. I'm going to do this one first because it's a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start off with doing a frowny face on the inside of the thigh right here. And then I'm going to draw a slight smile for the bottom of the foot. Now on the top part of the feet, it makes a greater than less than sign. So I'm going to do a diagonal line going out and then bringing it back in for the actual foot itself. Now I'm not going to leave it like this quite yet. I'm going to go ahead and erase the inside of the foot. And then I'm going to draw a V shape in between the toe here, and then just a diagonal line to separate that toe there. So somewhere on the tip right here, I'm just going to do a V that doesn't go too far in. And then I'm going to do just a simple line going like this. Now you can leave it like that if you're going for cartoony, but if you're going for realism, kind of round out your toes just by doing slight parentheses. And then of course, if you want to draw the claws, all the claws are is it's just where you start with a frown and then you add a V kind of on the top of it, kind of like upside down teardrops. So I'm going to do that for each one of those toes. 1, 2, 3. And then, of course, if you want to add some more realism, you can add some wrinkles by drawing some frowny faces like this. Or if you want to add, there's a little dew claw thing back here to the back of the foot you can add as well. And there's some more details you can add, but I'm going to go ahead and stop there so I don't spend too long on it. One thing I do want to do before I move on is there is a little bit of a fluff covering the top edge of the foot. So I'm going to erase part of the top edge of the foot. And then I'm going to do a small Z line just to give us our fluffy thigh that kind of overlaps the foot. All right, last thing to do here for this part right here is the other foot. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to draw a box coming down like this from both sides of the thigh. If you want to go ahead and erase the bottom part of the thigh and make it fluffy, you can, so you don't forget later. And then for the foot itself, it's going to look kind of awkward at first. What we're going to do is we want to make sure it's lower than this foot. So I'm going to start off by drawing a slight diagonal line down, make sure it goes below this foot. And then it doesn't have to like physically be below the foot. You just want to get it to where it's close to it. And then I'm just going to draw a flat line on the bottom and then just cap it off with a slight parenthesis. Now on this one, I see that there's an exaggerated V shape here for the webbing. So I'm going to do a really big V shape this time with a much smaller diagonal line here. And of course, same thing we did before, round off the toes, give them some claws if you want to add those claw details. And on this one, we definitely have some wrinkles because we're putting the weight on this foot in particular. So it does kind of press some of that weight down onto the foot itself. If you want to add more details, you can. There is another little dew claw thing here. But I'm going to go ahead and move on to the tail. So for the tail, all we do is we start on the back of the body. We're going to do a slight smile. And once again, this is on the back of the thigh area. We don't want to go too high up with it. So if you draw it and you notice it looks too high up, feel free to lower it down. But I'm going to do a slight smile, kind of like this. And then my goal is to make it have kind of like a zigzag on the tip of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it to where it has a smile going up, almost touch the body, come back down, and repeat that same process over and over until I get a fluffy tail. And I want to keep going until I touch the bottom of the foot so that by the time I'm done, I have something that looks kind of like this. I think I might have drawn this foot a little bit too big, so I'm going to go ahead and shrink it a little bit, just by drawing lines parallel to what I've already drawn and then moving the rest of it up. So kind of feel free to never be afraid to fix things, even if you get to a point where you think that you are done with the picture. If you look at something and you think it looks kind of weird or funny or something's not quite right about it, never be afraid to fix it. It's always, that's what erasers are for. Always feel free to fix things and never settle for less than your best. Always try your best, okay? All right. So I feel like that really feels a little bit more natural. There might be something I might be able to tweak it later, but I might do that more on my own time and not your time. All right. So now that I am pretty satisfied with the look of the feet and the look of the penguin itself, all I'm going to do now is just going to do a little bit of shading. So to shade this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the darkest areas first. So I'm just going to, now what I'm doing is I'm not pushing down entirely super dark. I'm just pushing down kind of like a medium dark. The reason I'm pushing down medium dark, even though this part of the penguin is in fact black, it's not like a pure dark black. You can still see shading on the penguin, and I definitely want to go back and shade even the black areas. So I'm going to do a kind of like a pale black like this by pressing pretty hard, but not my hardest. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in and press a little bit harder in those really dark areas. So this part's really dark, so I'm applying more pressure by pressing down harder on my finger like this. And then just shading in those parts that look super, super dark, I'm going to press even harder with my pencil. And this will really help build up those values and also help kind of establish which parts of the head is facing the light, or which parts are a little bit more 3D than others, or which parts are like standing out more than others. So here you can see that there's some slight darker areas and some slight lighter areas within that black, which really, really pushes the illusion of shading. All right, so now what I'm just going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of shading in the more paler areas, being very careful not to push them any darker than my absolute darkest blacks, because otherwise that might kind of take away from the details and stuff. And another thing you can add is you can add some textures. Penguins do have very, very fine feathers covering their bodies. So if you want to add a little bit of a feathery texture, you can. Something I would suggest doing is kind of like maybe adding some textures by adding like little bitty hatch lines to some of these smoother lines that we have inside the body, just to kind of build up some of that texture. And you can add some to kind of like the edges of the body. Just make sure it doesn't look too fluffy. Otherwise it wouldn't quite look like a penguin anymore. It would start looking, I don't know what it would look like, but just something that's not a penguin. And then to help establish the fact that it is on the ground, I would add a little bit of a shadow like this underneath his body, just to make him feel more like he's stepping kind of on this one foot rather than stepping on both feet at an angle. All right, so I think that's what I'm going to call done. I hope you guys had fun, and I would love to see your penguins. All right, have a good day. Bye. Before I call this quits, I was going to ask if you guys preferred me talking a little bit faster. I'm going to be fixing this foot as I'm talking, because I realized afterwards that I did not like how it turned out. So, would you guys rather me talk faster as I did in this video, or do you prefer it whenever I talk slower and I explain why I'm doing things more? So just give me some feedback and let me know what you guys prefer, and I'll try to teach it more in that style. And if I get a bunch of mixed reviews and stuff, then I'll just try to teach it in both ways occasionally. So yeah, I would appreciate your feedback, and I would love to hear back from you guys. Thanks. All right, bye.